So what I'm here to talk about is managing a hybrid cloud with Puppet. And I'm going to go really fast because it's not a lot of time. So it's basically a co-location demo, and any questions you have, we have all sorts of experts here. I didn't realize everybody would be here, but I dragged Adam. I'm in Puppet technical marketing. I used to be in sales. I've been with Puppet for several years. I dragged Adam, who is my colleague in marketing, and Simon Anderson, who is in solutions engineering in APAC, to help me. So by all means, any questions?
Yeah, and I just wanted to point out, as was mentioned earlier, Simon is in Sydney. So if you have trouble understanding John and I, Simon is a native English speaker as opposed to an American English. He should be able to help you out there.
Hey, let's not go too far.
Anyway, so what I'm going to talk about here is how this is the problem. How do I manage the same software, the same solutions running on machines on-prem and in public clouds? As you go on your cloud journey, you're probably going to start doing some co-location, some migration. You even might be managing things in the public cloud, but in different public clouds. So what I've set up here is a very simplistic demo, but it is real code and it works. And actually, while I'm doing that, let me do a couple of things. I'm going to put the link to the slide deck and to the control repo I'm using in the chat. If I can find the chat. There it is. So you can see them, you can follow along, you can actually go and get the code. All of this code, a couple of caveats. This is all Puppet code, open source Puppet, Puppet Enterprise, it doesn't matter. I'm using Puppet Enterprise because it comes with a really sweet GUI, but all of this will work in regular open source Puppet. So again, the challenge, how do I manage what I'm calling same profile servers, because we tried and couldn't come up with a better name, in different locations? So I've got my on-prem here on the left, and I've got servers in the public cloud on the right. Now they have the same software, they have the same Puppet profiles essentially. They're both running Linux, they're both running CentOS in this case, they're both running Apache. However, because they're in different places, there's going to have different things you can need to configure. In this case, I just went with a different, whoops. So they will automatically get the different content. So what I'm going to show you is how to build a hierarchy that allows you to manage the same stuff the same way and the different stuff a different way. And I apologize for this really ugly slide, but this is how I've set this up. So I have set up node groups. That is a Puppet Enterprise thing, but you can do it with roles and profiles in open source Puppet. And I have set up several. I'll show you my estate in a minute. But I have a Linux group that just uses a regex that says if your factor fact OS family equals Red Hat, you get this profile called baseline. And what that's doing is it's putting on wget, it's putting on vim. I don't even remember all the other things. I'll pull it up in a second. It's also putting on a user, a special user that we use. It's an SC profile user. Then I have a group called web servers, where it has a regex. And again, the taxonomy on this is just for samples only. You would probably do something much more sophisticated in the real world, but this isn't the real world. It's a half-hour demo. So I have OS family equals Red Hat. Again, in the real world, I could have Windows servers. I don't. And host name is not equal to PE server because I didn't want to put Apache on my PE server. And my classes are Apache, and I'm actually using the Forge module. If you go up on the Forge module and pull down the supported for PE customers, the Apache module, that's all I've done here. I haven't written any code for Apache. And I wrote two more pieces of code. Profile baseline Linux. Don't really need that. They would have gotten that. And a profile platform index. And what that is doing, I'll show you in a minute. That is actually pulling down, for our example, the index.html page. It's creating it and it's putting it down on the servers automatically. And then I have two subgroups off of the web server group. And one is looking for a domain of US West 1, compute internal. That means it's a cloud node, and it's getting a profile called profile platform cloud files. And one regex domain equals 192.168.0.1. These are my local on-prem, and they're getting a a class called on-prem files. So now let me see if I can get here. So this is my Puppet Enterprise system. Just these two nodes here, these IP 172 dot are running in AWS. They are EC2 instances. The Puppet server itself and these two other instances are actually running on a server sitting right here in my office behind me. So they're VMs that are sitting there running. And I want to do a couple of things. Let me give you, so anyone, you can go out. Obviously, you can't get into, I have my firewall up. You can't get into my private ones, but you can actually go in and access the web pages that I'm doing. And I'm going to dump them into chat. There's 3 web pages, 2 that are working and 1 that's not. And this is where the differences come in. This is my pup1 server. You can see it says, welcome to my Apache demo page. And it has this data center server. This is the other one, the EC2. This is the public one, and it has a different graphic. Same index page, a different graphic. So what I have done is I have puppetized all of this. So as soon as it attaches to the Puppet Enterprise, Puppet's going to go in and it's going to deploy the tools it needs. It's going to deploy Apache server. It's going to deploy the index page, and it's going to deploy the correct graphic depending on, again, what I put back in here, whether or not it is in the local domain or whether it's in the public cloud domain. It's going to give it a different graphic on the web page. And I wanted to do something, because in addition to this, I wanted to show how easy it is. Hopefully that's a little bit better. But what I have here, I have 2 more machines that I have provisioned. Right now, there's no Puppet on here. There is no Apache on here, and it's not on either one. So what we're going to do while I'm talking, we're actually going to automatically provision those machines. And I'm going to take a quick, Adam, if you want to go ahead and if you can go into the public machine and provision it the way we discussed, and I will do it here.
Sure. So let me just recap, make sure I understand what we're doing. You've got a couple of machines on-prem. You've got some running in EC2, but you've got them all managed from the same Puppet enterprise experience. And you're saying that so I've just kicked off that Puppet install for you on that server that, as you shown, that wasn't there. I've just kicked that process off. So you're saying that's all once that's done, this machine's going to be just managed as part of the other ones. You'll manage them all the same, even though.
Correct. It is going to go in, it's going to put the tools on, because it hasn't happened yet. So if I go in here, this is the public machine. There's no Vim on here. And one of the things that I am installing, and let me pull that code up, is in fact Vim. So I wish I could have the other thing up, but here I have this is my repo, it's in the chat. So under baseline, I have Linux. Under Linux, sorry, let me go back. I have this linux.pp that is including packages. It is including Vim. It is including SSH. No, I took that off, sorry. Because it was giving me trouble. So in here, I have a packages.pp that's going through, it's installing unzip, there's Vim, wget, and Vim. And if I go back here, it's also, is it still doing it? Did I take it off? It is also creating a user. It's calling this package, profile, platform, baseline, blah, 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 users. And it's creating a user called Puppet SE. If I go back here, there is no Puppet SE user. I can prove that. No user. So what is happening now? I kicked mine off and Adam kicked his off. And this is actually the install on the local version. This is the install of the machine on my local system. So now I have a Puppet agent running on it. I'm going to kick Puppet off a couple of times. So I'm going to have to exit out. Oops, can't type. Yeah. So I'm going to kick Puppet off. And the only reason I'm doing this is because we only have a half hour, so I don't have the time to let it sit there and run through. Oh, I haven't approved the certificate yet. That helps. So, and now I have 2 certificates waiting, 2 unsigned, pup3, and the one that Adam did. So now, Adam, you should be able to go in and run Puppet. And there it is. So it's kicked off. When we come back, those other machines will be there. So again, let me go through and show you how I set this up. Again, the code works fine no matter what, but it's easy to demo. So I've set these groups up. I have a Linux group. I'm using this regex that says if you're a Red Hat machine, apply these classes. The class in this case is profile baseline, blah, blah, blah. What you saw right here, this guy here, profile baseline, linux.pp. This is everything that's going to be applied because it is in this group. The next group I have is web servers, and there's 2 subgroups. Under the web server subgroup, I'm saying if you have Red Hat, but you are not my server, apply 2 classes. The Apache class, again, all that is, it's the Apache module off the Puppet Forge. And this class I wrote here, profile platform index. And this is one of the neat tricks I did here. So profile platform index. Here I have my profile platform. Actually, let me go back one. Under profile, this is a standard for any module. You can have files under the file. I have a file called index.html, and that is my landing page. And it does very little. It says, welcome to my Apache demo, like you should, right up there. And, oh, sorry, go back to that. And it calls a graphic called graphic.png. And this is how we're doing the specialization. Again, we have a different graphic depending on whether this is in the cloud or it's on-prem. So all this is doing, any node, somebody have a question? Okay, don't be shy about questions. Any node that falls into this group gets this. And this is where it starts to branch off. Now, again, these machines are very, very similar, but not identical. So I needed a taxonomy that says, okay, get everything it needs, but nothing it doesn't. So what I've done here under the web servers is I've created 2 subgroups, one called cloud that basically says, if your domain is us-west1compute.internal, you belong to this group. So it's only going to pick up the EC2 instances. And the class it's getting is called cloud files, profile platform cloud files. Back here, if you are an on-prem machine, and again, the domain is the local domain. Again, this is a sample taxonomy, but it absolutely works. You get the profile platform on-prem file. So what does that mean? What that is doing is back here, I have a cloud computing graphic. Look familiar? It's that guy right there on my web page. And I also have I called it new on-prem, and there's my other graphic. So what that back here, we have this class profile platform on-prem files. What that is doing is, I apologize. No, back manifests platform. So anything that's in the cloud gets this. Here's my cloudfiles.pp. What I am doing is I am taking the source file of modules, profile, cloud, computing. I'm taking that PNG file I showed you a minute ago. Using the file resource, I'm copying it to the machine under var www.html graphic.png. Excuse me, I'm going to step out for 1 second, and I'm going to run Puppet. I just have to run Puppet a couple of times to make sure everything gets configured. So anything that has that domain back here, this domain of the local host is going to get, oops, so that's the wrong one. This is the cloud. Anything that has the cloud domain, back it up and do this again. I apologize. So on-prem, anything that matches local gets this class on-prem files. Anything that's in the cloud gets the cloud. So here's the on-prem. Here's the on-prem file. It's doing the exact same thing. It's copying a different source file to the same place. So basically, I'm taking a different source and I'm copying it to the same named file so I don't have to have a different index file. There's only one index file for all of them. But as this goes through, it's going to populate that file correctly on each of the servers. And if I don't miss my guess, I now have 7 nodes. I have 2 more. One is pup3. And if I click on it, that's this one back here that I've been working on. If I click on it, I click on my configuration. It picked up Apache. It picked up baseline. It picked up index. Because it is an on-prem, it picked up the on-prem file. And now if I go to it, assuming I've remembered, there's my web page. Just like that. I haven't done anything but attached this to Puppet, and Puppet did the configuration, identified that it was an on-prem machine, and it configured it appropriately for an on-premises machine. Now, Adam, is yours done?
Sure is.
Ran to green? Okay. And which one was yours again? The problem with AWS instances is they always take the internal name as the name inside of Puppet.
I'm the third one down.
94, 49?
Third from top.
Third from top. Oh, this one. So it now has, this is a brand new machine. It has Apache. It has the baseline Linux. It identified it because of the fact of the domain, and the facts are right here. So if I search for domain, there's my domain fact, US West 1 compute.internal. It picked that up and it said, okay, you go into the profile platforms cloud files group. So it got the other file. It didn't get the on-prem file. It copied this guy on here. And now if you go to that URL I pasted in that says not working yet, and I paste this in, there it is, it's up. It was just provisioned completely start to finish by Puppet, and it has the correct content. Very, very simple. Because I've puppetized this, it's able to make the intelligent decisions based on the facts that I've defined and say, okay, you get all the base stuff because you are, in fact, a Linux bot. You have a Red Hat. You get the cloud stuff because you have that factor that says you are in the cloud. And this other stuff is the basic standard Puppet stuff that every machine is going to get. So I have now effectively, I'm managing these machines. If I go in and I do something, let me pick on pup3. So I'm actually going to go into var HTML, and I'm going to remove that file. It's gone. If I go back to, this is pup3. If I refresh this page, I no longer have the page. It's gone. So I'm going to run Puppet. And it's going to go in. It's going to find that the machine is out of compliance with the way it's defined, which is back here. It says because it has the baseline profile of index, it's going to get the index.pp file. It's going to copy, again, this index file out of the repo into the directory. It has run.
And John, you kicked off the agent manually there, but that's really just because we didn't want to all sit here and wait 30 minutes for the...
Right, yes, yeah. The time is set for 30 minutes. Yeah, you couldn't do this. You could, set it and walk away, go to lunch, come back in an hour, and your machine will be completely configured. It will have run through, usually takes no more than 2 for a new deployment. Takes no more than 2 Puppet runs, sometimes 3, depending if you have a lot of things you're managing. So I'm just forcing the Puppet run to speed things up. So I run Puppet. If I go back here and refresh it, my index page is back. So what I've done with this taxonomy I created here is I have allowed myself to manage these machines, even though they're in different clouds. Again, one's here on a server. One could be in GCP. You would have to change, of course, you would have to change the node group classification. Again, these aren't the best classifications. These are simply because they were easy. Yeah, that's not the classification. Go back here.
Yeah, so
That's it. You have to change that. But you could have one set of servers on-prem, one set in AWS, and one set in EC2, or excuse me, GCP. And it will configure them all exactly the same, except the exceptions for the specific cloud. So you can manage these nodes in a nice, neat hierarchy. And you can migrate systems to the cloud at the touch of a button, which is essentially what Adam did while I was talking. He took a machine that I had created. He installed the Puppet agent. He did basically what I did in front of you right here. He ran the Puppet agent, forced a Puppet run a couple of times. And now we have an extra fully configured machine up in the cloud that's running the appropriate software as defined by our catalog.
And this was a pretty straightforward demo, John, but this is a real use case, right? Especially as companies, I know a lot of companies that were on a path towards rewriting and re-architecting applications, but then when the pandemic hit, they just had to scale fast and sort of had to do this, right? Just to lift and shift or additional machine scale on the web.
Absolutely, it's the quickest way. And if your machine is already puppetized, putting it up in the cloud, provisioning it in the cloud is easy. All you have to do is add an agent to it and make sure it has the appropriate catalog. If it gets everything that an on-prem machine does, give it the role, give it the appropriate profiles, and away you go. The work is already done. But I can take this is, like you said, it's a real world situation. We can start, if we have puppetized machines on-prem, as we need to expand, as we need to decommission machines in the on-site data center, we can just spin up new instances in the cloud, add a Puppet agent to them, and they will be configured automatically. The taxonomy is oversimplified here for demonstration purposes. But
yeah,
this is a real world use case.
Maybe we can talk about that just a little bit more. So if you go back to that, where you had the taxonomy, where we're showing kind of what you've named your groups there, or cloud and on-prem. So the example you've given is with you've got this on AWS, and so you've called it cloud, but you could have called it AWS, and then had another line here that said GCP, and you'd use a regular expression there to match something that was in Google's cloud, right?
Correct. And I could have, yes, I can very much do that. And I can do one of two things in that case. Let me go back to the node groups. And again, this does apply to open source Puppet, but we got a bitch and GUI here. If the configuration in AWS and GCP will be identical, I could just add another thing here that says domain equals GCP and say match any rule. And it would automatically pick those up. So I can give them the exact same configuration. Or I could create another node group with whatever unique classes, if they need a special tool, if they need a special configuration, a port open, something like that. I could create another node group and give it a single thing that says domain equals GCP and give it its personalization via that node group. It is absolutely flexible, and it's all in the taxonomy of how you set this up. You know, you're doing the same things to the machines over and over again. There's no reason to reinvent the wheel. Once you have it puppetized, moving the machine, decommissioning it, suddenly GCP machines become a lot cheaper than EC2 instances. Spin them up in GCP, put a Puppet agent on them, add them to the group. Go to lunch, come back another hour, they will be fully provisioned, and you can take your EC2 instances down.
And then, John, I have another question. As we're modernizing our environment and we are moving things to the cloud, and we look at starting to make some of those, breaking up that monolith and making some of those changes to microservices and things, can Puppet help me then with managing those containers and pushing out applications and microservices instead of kind of application stacks to servers?
Yes. And that I would pull Knes back in, because that is what Relay does.
And I think there's another session a little later today that goes into a little bit more detail, right, about Kubernetes and containers with.
I believe so.
I don't think that's on the agenda. All right. I shouldn't ask a question I don't already have the answer to.
No, that's a really good answer, because we get that question a lot. And it's what is the use case in the cloud? A lot of people are simply, as you said, lifting and shifting their workloads. It's the quickest way. I've been doing this a long time. You have grand plans, say, okay, we'll lift and shift and we'll convert later. Um, 25 plus years in this business, a lot of times later never comes. But yes, if you are dealing with a cloud native application that you are running in Kubernetes, that you want to deploy workloads, control workloads, update them, that is what you want Relay for.
Great. I just want to remind people we've got about 5 minutes left. So if you've got questions, feel free to take advantage of the Slack channel or the Q&A panel here, and we'll answer those live for you now if we can.
Yeah, and if you have any particular challenges that I haven't, you want to throw out something you're running into, by all means, you have the brain power plus me here. So.
And it looks like we do have a question that's come in from the audience. I'm going to ask Simon if he can answer it. I'll read the question out, Simon, and I'll let you answer it.
Yeah, I'll just type it in the text. You can read it out. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, the question from the customer is currently working with moving to a hybrid cloud environment using AWS. They went down the route of adding Route 53 resolver to rename host names so they show up with custom DNS names. The problem is that's a really expensive way to do it. And notice here you haven't done that. Instead, you're using the standard internal names. Is DNS not really needed if using Puppet, Simon? So it has to do with kind of that name resolution back to internal versus external in the Puppet agent.
It's okay. So one of the really nice things about Puppet is if you're only using it for an internal, so for like a test system or an internal system, if you want to use DNS, and DNS is good because you can use it for certificate names. But there's another option, and this is really great for development environments, is Puppet can share information amongst other machines that are managed by Puppet. And so, when I'm doing stuff internally that I want to test, so this is not an enterprise system, this is just for testing. When you're going to move on to production, I would recommend using a DNS server. And Puppet can give you a lot of options on doing that in a less expensive way. But just internally, there's a thing called shared resources. One of those resources is a host file. And by sharing the host file entries, but literally as soon as the Puppet agent is installed, every machine knows what every machine is. You can give them names, you can give them whatever. This can be done in Hira, this can be done via Factor. There's multiple ways, all of them just as easy as each other. You just choose the one that seems more intuitive to yourself, which one seems more simple. And once you've decided that, literally, as soon as you add a new machine to your Puppet managed fleet, they all know where everyone is. They all know each other's host names. They all know each other's IP addresses. It's like DNS without DNS. That being said, if you're going to have a network that is exposed to the greater world, the greater internet, then of course you need to do DNS. That's a no-brainer. And using Puppet as well as some of Puppet's modules, there's so many ways just to make it, it cuts down on the headaches. It makes life a whole lot easier. So I'll put some notes in here to answer that question. Short summary is what I just said then.
And again, the plug for the modules, I did not write any of the code that's deploying Apache here. I pulled it all off the Puppet Forge. And again, if you go into my control repo, into my Puppet file, there is the Apache, and you need the concat module is required. So the only thing I did here for the web server nodes, if I can get back to that, the classes I did my little index file, but I just called Apache from the module and said default SSL host is true. So I didn't have to pass. You can pass all the parameters. I didn't want to. So, the module is a great way to avoid doing a whole lot of coding. I did none to deploy this Apache. I typed Apache into the class and magically it came. And I think I am out of time. So thank you all for listening. I hope it was helpful. Thank you, Adam and Simon, as always.